it the big circle, the spinning circle, how about that?
Spinning circles. Description.
And I go to the bottom of the big yellow. Good. And then make sure that's out.
Analysis can be to pay attention when somebody starts.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Or note about enough time when something begins.
Time and he starts the opening prayer as this will be cut on
For
the
editing.
video.
Okay, this should not say folder.
Yeah, folder A, that's right. And then you just click record, because it's empty. I think it's empty, right? If there's one in there, it can be deleted.
It's giving me some information with the time when I press record. This doesn't look normal to me. How does the power that I toggled? It doesn't look familiar to me.
Oh, no, that's the OK button. Oh. That's happened. Oh, goodness. Oh, that's because it was on hold, Ramagiri.
Oh,
You,
I
so
see.
yeah, you pushed it all the way on. If you do that, it will jam it up. Okay, so now it's going to go off. So yeah, make sure it's not on the hold. And that one's on, right?
It is.
Okay. So, oops, now I'm just please. There is one in here, but I can do it. There it is. I didn't download that one. Yeah, I just didn't do the
That would be Wednesday evening class.
That was the evening class on Wednesday, yeah. Now the call should work. Yeah, just make sure that's not over. Yeah.
I'll come a little early today.
Okay, this afternoon. Excellent. we're just perfecting the notes.
Huh?
We're perfecting the notes.
Well,
Okay. This free class will be kept on the video. So that's that one. So then, okay, bring that. Oh, put it on the computer so we can see that. Because stop pressing that. So. Do you want to set this one up, okay? Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yes, it really goes on that. And this, and plug it in. There's two buttons that you have to go through, so start and then you start sharing. And then this one you can click on, but when we click on the other one, it will automatically.
Or you want something cool?
That'd be wonderful.
Here we go.
Which one button can't have your Vishrinyamadevaha Bhadram Pashyenmakshapedyajatraha Sthirairangai Sushuvahum Sastanubihi Vyashemadevaitayadayu Swasti na Indro Vritashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwadevaha Swasti nastarshyo Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatirdadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Agnirmurdha chakshushi chandrasuryau
Agnirmurdha chakshushi chandrasuryau
Dishashrotre vagdivrtascha vedaha
Dishashrotre vagdivrtascha vedaha
Vayuh prano hridayam vishvamasya
Vayuh prano hridayam vishvamasya
Padbhyam prithivī hyesha sarva bhutantaratma
Adhyam prithivī yesha sarva bhutantaratma.
Yeah, sounding very nice. Yeah, wonderful. Very good. A little introduction to this section, starting from verse mantra number 4. 4, and then we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which closes this whole section, correct? So from now till the end of the section, we have a particular focus. What is the focus? The verses or the mantras number 1 and 2. Remember the little fire and the sparks? And what was the other one? You know? Yeah, nothing has, it is all essential nature of the Purusha, Divyaha, Amurtaha, formless. So the not nothing, formless. So nothing means free of attributes. So free of attributes, first that which is Sarupaha,
then free of attributes. So this constant paradox or the tension is going to be explained in a particular way using the kind of a, for lack of a better term, a Vedic cosmology. You know, cosmology means the kind of like a creation story. The purport, of course, is not the creation story at all, but to know that everything is nothing but this Purusha who is essentially formless and who is the truth of everything, starting with this body, mind, sense complex. And then, very interestingly, and that's why we read the Bhashya, because the Bhashya will keep reminding us that whatever has come out of this Purusha, the coming and going is mithya, what has come is also mithya. So again we go back to that essential Satchidananda nature of the Purusha, Satyam Jnanam Anantam. So that is the essential nature. But then since we live surrounded by this duality that we have trouble dismissing, you know, so therefore this very interesting paradoxical tension between the essential nature of the I of Bhagavan, you know, I not I, because that is also there in this verse. We are not talking of the I, we are talking of I, the essential nature of I, which is the same as Bhagavan, and which has given birth, so to speak, to this manifest reality. So the source of the manifest reality, essentially formless. So Jagat Karanam and essentially no Karanam, you know, no cause and show cause. This is this tension is going to be drilled into our, you know, into our very what is that, second nature. It's going to be, hopefully, by the time we finish this section. Now another caveat after this explanation of what we are going to do, what we are about to do. Of course, every explanation in Vedanta comes with a caveat, you know. So what is the caveat? The caveat here is that the mind goes to La La Land. Yeah, that's all I you know, to put it badly. You know why? Because the next series of successive mantras, you know, this came, that came, you know, Tasmad Yaju Gumshi Diksha, and then all the Vedas came, and the horses came, and the goats came, and this one came, and the common cold came, and the Ebola virus came, and this came, and that came. You know, it's just going to be like this. And what will the mind say? I'm not coming to class. Why should I come? I already saw, you know, how the, you know, how all these other things came. So why should I, you know, why should I do this? Well, so what? In the last class, the Ashwas came. Ashwa means horses. In this class, the Veda is coming. Big deal. You know, nothing will happen if I, you know, don't set the alarm for the weekend Bhashya classes, and you know, and if I revert back to my essential nature in sleep. So in fact, I'm practicing Vedanta, you know, through by reverting to my essential nature, formless, nameless, no duality. And why not I just do that? Why is this important? You know, and why is reading this long Bhashya, you know, which takes forever to finish, and takes forever to repeat, and takes forever to understand? What is the use of this? You know, it's very easy to say, and in fact, this very pitfall is what has to be avoided. Yeah, it's really the pits, because because this is where that what is that called, that complacency can sneak in, and we have already seen that happening, you know. So actually there are three mantras, and the first one is what? The essential nature, sorry, the Bhagavan, Brahman as the cause of the universe, and the second one is the essential nature of Brahman as being, you know, free of attributes and free of form, and the third one is the nature of this Bhagavan in the form of the cause of the universe. So the cause of the universe is important because we are looking at Bhagavan. When we talk of the manifest universe, we have to talk about Bhagavan. We can't just talk about Brahman. You know. So therefore, that particular tension between what has come and the truth of what has come, having a so-called conditioned form, and what is the conditioning agent here, so to speak, is the status of being the cause of the universe. So this is why this whole thing, can start to get very complacent, can wear on the mind in a kind of a way that is, difficult. And the difficulties, one difficulty I have already pointed out, it seems repetitive. And the second difficulty is, why does it seem repetitive? Because I'm not able to bring a fresh mind. And why am I not able to bring a fresh mind? Because secretly, deep down, there are issues with Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the authority figure. Bhagavan is a source of disappointment for my life, because what has he done for me? Nothing. And why is it a he? I don't know. But all these secret feelings, secret means secreted, subconscious, then they start to seep out at this time in the form of a certain discomfort or resistance about knowing knowing this connection between the Purusha and what has come from the Purusha. And the other thing is, the other reason for the block or the resistance is that when the focus is not on the cosmology, why are we studying the cosmology? So these three reasons, this section becomes very heavy, especially to teach in the West. In India, it's not such a problem, because there is a certain culture of acceptance of Bhagavan, and which is there, universally there. In the West, this becomes a very this is like going to the dentist, it is met with as much enthusiasm, this section, so watch out for a certain listlessness, watch out for not wanting to come to class. And for the next few mantras, I will suggest that if you are anywhere in this area, to literally come, unless something is really not okay. And if you're taking it online and while in Eugene, I don't recommend that. For the next few weeks till we finish this, you please come to class, be present, and this will overcome some of that, because when you're studying together, it happens. Because then the problem here is with alienation and isolation. And if you're sitting at home, it's much easier to tune out than, if I'm looking at each one of you. Harder to tune out. Correct? So that being said, so this mantra, we'll see the bhashya of this today. And it's a bhashya that is very beautiful. And he also shows here the reason why we have to look and understand this vision of Bhagavan, why this Bhagavan is needed, and why everything is reverted back to Bhagavan. And without this Bhagavan, we cannot have a discussion of the Jagat. When you bring in the Jagat, Bhagavan comes along for free, freely comes along. You don't have to pay, you don't have to make any attempt. It's free, because it's like a package deal. Just like when you sign up for Vedanta, teacher comes for free. Correct? So similarly, when you are looking into the Jagat, then the cause of the Jagat walks in, because in this tradition, the cause, the effect is not separate from the cause, but the cause is separate from the effect. So that is why this section becomes very important. Because otherwise, even though I'm feeling I've studied this, I know this is going to make it very pakka. Pakka is now an English word. Look it up. Okay. So there we go. Where are we now? No, there is a big introductory bhashya. That's what we have to do. We can't go immediately into Agnir Murdha. So, here. Now, so what does he say by way of introduction? He says some very interesting things. He says, संक्षेपतः परविद्याविषयम् अक्षरं निर्विशेषं पुरुषं सत्यं दिव्यः हि अमूर्तः इत्यादिना मन्त्रेण उक्त्वा पुनः तदेव सविशेषं विस्तरेण वक्तव्यम् इति प्रवृत्ते. So he says, first what did we do? First what did the Upanishad do? Sankshepatah paravidya vishayam. In brief. Sankshepatah in brief. Paravidya vishayam. The topic of the paravidya. What is paravidya? The knowledge of the self, of the absolute. Para means absolute. So the knowledge of the absolute as the self, the knowledge of the self as absolute. So paravidya vishayah. So paravidya vishayam. So this topic, vishaya, topic of paravidya, of the knowledge of the absolute. And what was the knowledge of the absolute? Aksharam. Immediately we should go there. You know, yaya aksharam adhigamyate. You have to just memorize that. That by which the imperishable, the indeclinable is known as yourself is called paravidya. So this paravidya, whose subject matter is aksharam, you know, whose subject matter is aksharam, and nirvishesham. Nirvishesham means formless. Whose subject matter is aksharam was shown, was briefly sankshepatah presented as what? Purusha, as that which inheres the body mind sense complex, and as that which is simultaneously the cause of the universe, the cause which never becomes, because this was talked about. So, and then what? How was it shown? How was this elucidated? Divyaha amurtaha ityadina mantrena. So through this mantra, which started with divyaha amurtaha, okay, which was what? The mantra number 2, second mantra. Very good. So through the second mantra, the Purusha was talked about in brief as the very subject matter of Paravidya, which is nothing but Akshara. So now the Akshara, which is neuter, has been made into Purusha, a sentient being who is at once the truth of the body mind sense complex and the cause of the universe. So this is important to understand, because he is highlighting this, because Aksharam Brahma, neuter, and then Ayam Divyaha Amurtaha Purushaha, masculine, you know. So this is the gender bending which the Upanishad does all the time. Yeah, you can make it feminine also, so no problem. So then, so this is the situation. Purushaha, you know, Satyam, Divyaha, Amurtaha. Satyam means the only existent thing. Divyaha, Amurtaha, Ityadina, Mantrena, Uktva. So having talked about this through these mantra, Punaha, Tadevam. So Punaha means repeatedly, again and again. Tat evam, that alone, Savishesham, Vistarena Vaktavyam iti Pravavritte. So the purport of the Upanishad in the coming mantras is Punaha, again, Tadevam, only that only. Tadevam doesn't mean something else. That alone, Mantrena, Vistarena Vaktavyam. Now it is time to talk about it in great detail. Vistara means detail. So Vistarena Vaktavyam iti. So Vistarena means in detail it has to be elucidated. How? Savishesham. Savishesham. First it was Nirvishesham, formless. Vishesha means attributes. So Nir, you know, Nirgataha, Visheshaha, Yasmat. So, you know, from whom all the attributes have departed. That is formless. You know. And now here what? Savishesham. Visheshena saha vartate, that which remains with all the adjuncts and the attributes and adjectives, etc. that substantive which has, without undergoing any change while remaining the substantive, given rise to attributes. The attributes come and go, attributes are dependent on the substantive is free of all attributes. Correct? Yeah. So this is what has already been talked about. Now in great detail, the Savishesham, how this same Nirvishesha, the one that is free of all attributes, remains as it were with attributes without being touched or affected by the attributes, is going to be talked about punaha again. Then what? Then mantrena uktva punaha tadeva savishesham vistarena vaktavyam. Now it has to be talked about in detail. Iti pravavritte. Now the Shruti is embarking. Pravavritte embarks, is embarking. So some sankshepa vistara uktahi. So why is it embarking on this thing, on elucidating in detail all these things? Why is it on this job? Now if you ask that, the answer is sankshepa vistarokto hi padharthah sukha adhigamyah bhavati. You know, so only when that which is presented in brief, is presented in an extremely, what is that, detailed fashion, what happens then? Sukha adhigamyah, it becomes easy to understand. Yeah. Even though the mind goes, I've already heard it before. That's why I said you have to be very careful here. So sukha adhigamaha. Adhigamaha means getting it. Adhi plus gam. Gam to go, meaning getting it, going towards it cognitively. Cognitively assimilating this knowledge becomes easier upon repetition. That's what the Upanishad is thinking. But I don't think that. We don't care. So, we don't care what you think. Why? Because this is a means of knowledge and you have to allow yourself to be open to this, allow yourself to be operated upon. Just like the doctor doesn't care. First the doctor will do one test. Put you in some, X-ray machine or some MRI machine. Oh, here is something here that needs to come out. First, that is determined in brief. Correct? Yeah. Sankshepena, we don't know what the nature of this thing that needs to come out is. We don't know where it has come from. We don't know what it is. But it needs to come out because it's obstructing something. Then what? Then after that, the patient is anesthetized. Yeah. Because the doctor doesn't want you to be a stereo, system. Along with his ideas or her ideas of what to do, you are not going to supply which, scalpel size you should use, where you should cut, are you cutting in the correct place? Your doctor doesn't want to hear you say all that. Yeah. So even before you meet the surgeon, you meet the friendly anesthesiologist, unto whom you have to have full shraddha, complete trust. Yeah, complete trust. And that anesthesiologist, you are already on a gurney, correct? Yeah, with some things here, and all that remains to be done is to strap you to that gurney. That's the only thing missing. But for all intents and purposes, you are immobile. And then you are wheeled there, and then as you are being wheeled, the friendly anesthesiologist introduces himself and says, what is your weight? This is the only time you should not lie because the anesthesia is given because of the weight. Yeah. And if you give 10 pounds less, that means you will wake up in the middle of the operation. So, this is the only time you have to be honest. Other times you can flub it, no problem. This time you cannot take chances. Then what? Then, he or she will say, you will not know anything. You just please count backward. And one small mask will come in front. That mask also is a very dim memory. You don't even remember. And then when you wake up, you think that the operation is yet to be done, but actually it has all been finished, and you are nicely in the in the what is that, in the influence of the painkiller and everything, so you don't know anything. Correct? So no operation is done, with the patient's input. Yeah. So same thing with the patient of samsara. That is what that is what everyone is. That is what one is. One is a patient of samsara. That is why it is called bhavaroga, the disease of samsara. Everybody is patient. No, but I am impatient to know about myself. Yes, you are an impatient patient. Yeah. And if you are in the Gurukula studying full time, you are an inpatient. Yeah. So you are a patient who is hospitalized. You won't be released till the disease is gone. Correct? Yeah. And usually that takes 12 years. Yeah, it's a 12-year-long hospitalization where you are given, what is that? Special, surgery every day. All the wrong notions are cleared out, Yeah, all the wrong notions are cut out. The wrong notions are the tumors that are growing inside the cognition and affecting the cognition. So it's not that new knowledge is put in, that knowledge is you, it is shining, it's already brilliant. Everything that is not coming, that everything that is coming in the place that is not helpful, all those notions of pain and sorrow are excised by this very repetition. So you cannot say, I had the same surgery yesterday, why should I have it today? Because yesterday everything was not able to come out. So repeated anesthesia. So this anesthesia is not some kind of a mindless listening, it is Shraddha. Anesthesia here is Shraddha, allowing myself to suspend the notions so that whatever is taught comes into play and actually has an effect on me. So therefore it says Sukha Adhigamaya, for the sake of easy understanding, this repetition is very important. Because those notions are deeply ensconced. The notions that, what are the notions? I am good for nothing. Simply speaking, I am unacceptable to myself. So that's why, this is Bhagavan's glory. Why should I pay attention? This is what happens. So the repeated, talking about this, what is it doing, even be unbeknownst to me, and it had better be unbeknownst to me, because knowingly I will not consent. So unbeknownst to me, this is excising all those, those mediocre notions of myself that I have, or even less than mediocre notions of myself that I have, that are being worn out. It's kind of like what the water does to the, stone. So here the stone-like mind, tamas, dense, ajnana ghana, dense, not pragyana ghana, ajnana ghana, dense. And so this dense mind, which is, like a stone, not only is it dense, but it has all these jagged edges. The jagged, ragged edges are the ragadvesha based personality. The water is the flowing Ganga of knowledge, coming through the Upanishads and through the teacher. And what happens? That this Ganga or this Yamuna or this Narmada, these rivers, they fashion the stone into this smooth Shivalinga. You get the Shivalinga out of the bed of the of the Ganga, In fact, we have in Rishikesh, it's called Gangadhareshwara. The Pujya Swamiji picked out this stone from the river. The river has already smoothened all the jagged, ragged edges. And that is what it takes to become Bhagavan. So here, what is happening is there are two ways of, letting go of the personality. One is through force, which is called the chiseling. This is what the sculpture does. Takes a little chisel, and then hammers it all out. It is violent and it is what? Hurtful. If one is the stone, and if one is stone like. It is violent, it is hurtful, it is invasive. The other one is to just lull it constantly back and forth in the waters of knowledge. Cook it in the waters of knowledge, so that slowly, without even knowing, all the ragged, jagged edges smooth out. This is a very smooth operation. Yeah. So the chiseling, it's also chiseling, but the chiseling is done without anyone knowing. It's all happening under the surface. Yeah, because you don't see the Shivalinga being shaped, you just see the Shivalinga at the end. Yeah. So after mantra number 10, everyone is going to become a Shivalinga like. Yeah. Very beautiful. If one allows. So that is basically what is very, very important. So this allowing myself to be lulled by this knowledge into a place of acceptance, and there is no virodha. Virodha means I don't come in my own way. There is no obstacles. So therefore he says, he hopes, Adi Shankara hopes that by this repetition, sukhaha adhigamaha. So easily it is understood, like even being lulled, these jagged, edgy rocks are being lulled by the mother of knowledge, the Shruti, and so what happens is that they lose all the viparita bhavana, all the opposing tendencies, all the wrong notions are just made smooth very easily without even knowing it. So therefore sukha adhigama bhavet bhavati. And how? He says sutra bhashya ukti vad iti. So how it becomes easy to understand? Like even we have the sutras. What are sutras? Aphorisms. What are aphorisms? What are the examples of aphorisms that we have? Yeah, but what is the example? What sutras do we know? Patanjali's sutras, Yoga sutras, Brahma sutras, and then Paninihan sutras, last but not the least. So what happens in Brahma sutras? Brahma sutras are, they are studied. You don't understand anything. Athato Brahma jignasa. Therefore, thereafter, we desire to know Brahman. What is this therefore? That therefore takes 1 year to complete. What is this thereafter? That word again takes another 6 months to complete. So like this, because it is a heavily laden aphorism. See, the aphorism is not an aphorism when you are just when you are having verbiage. Verbiage is verbal garbage. That's why it's called verbiage. When one is so verbose and you keep saying something or the other, that's not an aphorism. An aphorism is very pithy, and it has 6 lakshanas. It has 6 characteristics that you have to follow if you want to make an aphorism. You can try actually, You can try and see. You can make an aphorism out of anything. You can try and see. And to follow the 6, what is that called? The 6 characteristics of the aphorism is not easy. It has to be saravat. It has to be meaningful. You cannot just have an aphorism without meaning. It has to have applicability in different situations. Vishwato mukhaha. It cannot be contradicted if you introduce it into a new situation. And then asthobhyam, it should be flawless. It cannot have limited applicability. It should be flawless in 2 ways. It cannot have limited applicability, and also it should not be contradicted by anything else. Asthobhyam anavadyam. So like this, these characteristics make what an aphorism is. And the first 2 mantras, according to Adi Shankara were basically like aphorisms. That's why we took so long to unpack them, because it just very in a precise form, it gave the basic what's its name, the definition, and then we had to expand everything. So Sutra Bhashyavat iti. So he says that just like the sutra, every aphorism needs a bhashya. The Upanishad is no less than an aphorism, and in a way he is kind of talking about himself. That's why I'm writing this bhashya. Very nice, a little touch of himself we see. Why he's doing this? Because the Upanishad here is just like a sutra elsewhere too. So therefore the bhashya is very much needed, because the sutra without bhashya is like having the, the salad dressing without the salad. So like this, the both go together. So therefore I'm writing this bhashya, and also it's a little covert way of saying take this seriously. So Sutra Bhashyavatiti, this repetition is going to help us. And then what does he say? Yaha api prathamajat pranad hiranyagarbhat jayate andasya antar virat saha tattvantarittvena lakshamano api tasmadeva purushat jayate etat etanmayah chet etad artham aha tam cha vishinashti. Very important point he makes here. This is really to be underlined and really understood properly. So yaha api, even though that who prathamajat pranat hiranyagarbhat jayate. So this which is called Bhagavan, he here just because of the grammar, no other, and also the word Purusha, that's all, no other thing. He actually means formless, so genderless. So this which was called Bhagavan, this Bhagavan Yaha, the one who was revealed as that which is born of what? Born of the Maya Hiranyagarbha, the potential to create. Because how does Brahman convert itself to Bhagavan, here called by the name of Virat? Virat means the manifest waking world, the creating cause, creating present continuous. Okay, Virat. And then what? And where did this Virat come? Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is the same Virat in the potential to create. Same Virat with the potential to create, not the absolute manifestation of the creation. But the potential to create is called Hiranyagarbha. So without this potential, creation cannot come. The universe is still unmanifest with the potential to be manifest, and that potential, from the standpoint of the feminine, all knowledge is called Maya, and from the standpoint of the masculine, it is called Hiranyagarbha. That which is the subtle Sutratma, the prana which was talked about last time. Etasmat jayate prana. So that prana alone is, and that's why we had such a big discussion of whether the prana is intrinsic to the Purusha or not. Do you remember that? I do.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's why, because which came first, Purusha or prana? Even though the prana is seen as something which is, which has, the prana is subtle. So the subtle has to come before the manifest universe and the cause. But here again, that Purusha is without prana. The prana has in fact come from the Purusha, not the other way around. It was seen. But still Adi Shankara says the mind is tuned to thinking that Hiranyagarbha, what is that? I mean, this is the base level in the beginning. This is how we memorize everything in terms of the Vedantic, what are they called? The glossary. We have this glossary and then we start memorizing. Hiranyagarbha, potential to create. Virat, manifest creator. And then what is the Ishvara? The one that is in repose. So we have all these, kind of the notions. These also become notions, Adi Shankara says. That's why to pay very close attention to this particular section, because these definitions that we have studied from a very base level of understanding also become notions. Yeah. And then what is the first two letters of notion? No. Yeah. So these notions have no place, and therefore they have to be shunned. No and shun. That's how you have to remember with these notions. Yeah, they have to be shunned, because first you have a kind of a framework in the mind for ease of understanding. Then that framework, which is very rigid, because we are so afraid that we are not going to get it, we memorize certain things in certain ways, and then we keep it as a little scaffolding, that has to come down, or at best has to be made elastic. You have to breathe, you have to insert prana in it and make it breathe, expand, just like your stomach comes out when you breathe. See, everything, chest comes out, stomach comes out, then same thing these notions have to do. Yeah, you can't put these notions in a corset and then make them, these Victorian people used to wear these corsets to have small waist and all these things, So you cannot put the notions in a corset and then not allow it to breathe, because then those even though the notions are wonderful and Vedantic, they start to atrophy in the mind. That is why this section becomes very important. Because first, we say what was born was Hiranyagarbha, then Hiranyagarbha gave rise to Virat, and this Virat Purusha was described as Divya the one who had, Agnihi Murdha, the one whose head is in the heavens, and the sun and the moon are his eyes. This is Virat Purusha, and then the father of Virat is Hiranyagarbha, and the Hiranyagarbha is Sutratma Prana, so therefore Prana came before Purusha. All these wrong things start to come, because the implications of those notions which are held, because one is so afraid of losing them, this is why this is converting, this section converts the baby Vedantin into a grown up Vedantin. Just like anything, notions about dharma, tell the truth always, okay, satyam vada, all right, and then what, then that satyam is going to hurt somebody. And sometimes the doctor also practices asatyam. Somebody is very old and is very stressed, and then they are, after they are having some health problems, they go through the diagnosis and it finds that they have only few months to live, and it's not good news. And the family members tell the doctor, please don't tell this to this person, because the person is very stressed and will have their left 2-3 months, whatever are left, will be consumed in worry and anxiety. And the doctor says, you're fine. You have a heart of a 50-year-old, even though you're 80 years old. Just eat whatever. Oh, what should I not eat? Eat whatever you want. Go wherever you want. Do whatever you want. And here what is the doctor doing? Telling a lie. Why? Because it's not benefiting the doctor. That's when it becomes, the lie is allowed. Why? Because you're doing it not to hurt somebody else, to not to make a situation worse. So here, once we have Satyam Vada, tell the truth, it is dharma, in an ideal type situation, Samanya Dharma. But in Vishesha, in the situation itself, where you have to be with it and you have to allow this dharma to air out and make it applicable to particular situation, that same dharma, it looks the same, but it has a certain elasticity. Not elastic because it benefits me. No, elastic because it actually speaks to that particular situation, in that particular place, in that particular time. So similarly, like a child, knowing what dharma is, has to grow into seeing how it is applied differently in different situations. Similarly, our understanding of Vedanta from Vedanta KG, you have to progress into making these concepts, seeing how these concepts are applicable to different situations in the Jagat. So here, even though he explains this very beautifully, Hiranyagarbha is seen as a different entity, and Hiranyagarbha is seen as Virat, and that Virat is seen as Purusha. So out of Hiranyagarbha has come Purusha. Then who becomes more important? Hiranyagarbha, which is what? Pranatma, Sutratma, that prana, which is a potential, is an example of Hiranyagarbha. So prana precedes Purusha. This would be wrong. This was already dismissed. That's why we had such a long discussion. So therefore he says, even though in the nascent Vedantic mind, in the nascent understanding, and the nascent understanding is essentially, very rigid. In that rigid understanding, we have concepts, because that's how we have led all our lives. We have led all our lives through concepts. And the mind is very rigid. The mind always functions through categories. This or that. Then the categories are boxes. Mutually, they don't have any seepage. It's either this or that. So the whole world is seen as either or, which is in fact our nemesis. This is why it is called samsara roga. Yeah, samsara roga, the disease of samsara is the disease of inflexibility, which is really the precursor of subjectivity. Subjective means inflexible. That subjectivity comes from either or. So therefore the subjectivity has to be dismissed, and so what to do in order to dismiss this subjectivity? Pay attention very closely to the next few mantras, Adi Shankara says. Because even though that which is described as Virat, which we saw in the last, which we are going to see now, Agnihi Murdha, the one who has sun and moon as the eyes, came from a potential called Hiranyagarbha. Even though the sequence is correct, and even though the two are seen as separate entities, this is the time to not sift and separate, but to unite, where in my cognition to see everything as Purusha alone, as Bhagavan alone. So who is this Hiranyagarbha? A latent, dormant form of the Purusha. Who is this prana? A latent form of the Purusha alone. And where has this prana come from? Purusha. Where has Hiranyagarbha come from? Purusha. Where has Bhagavan come from? Purusha. So this is what has to be understood. So therefore the repetition to, like when you have to shake out the rug. The rug has so many, the rug is a magnet for dust. And so too the dusty notions. If you shake out once, it's not enough. You have to actually beat it several times. And this is what is going to happen here. Yeah. This rugrat of the mind is going to be shown the sunlight of knowledge, and then the mantras are the little stick that beats all the dust out of them. Another metaphor. Yeah. So, therefore he says this becomes very important. So yaha api prathamajat pranat hiranyagarbhat jayate andasya antar virat, because you think that the virat needs a source. And what is the source? Anda means source here. Anda also means egg. So this egg, so the golden egg, hiranyagarbha, golden womb, all these things you have to let go of. So he says that even though that is there, that's why he kind of makes it into a hyperbole. So Prathamajat Pranat, from that prana which was Hiranyagarbha, from that garbha, this Virat is born, saha tattvantaritvena lakshamanopi. So even though in principle it is characterized as different things, lakshamano api sanna, tasmadeva purushat jayate. Even though it is seen as different, you have to see it as everything coming from the Purusha alone. Etanmayaha chet, etanmayaha cha iti etad artham aha. Etanmayaha means it is verily the same Purusha. And it is, what is that? It is not only the same, it is not only born of the same Purusha, but it is pervaded by the same Purusha. It is verily the same Purusha. So don't think that now we are going to, first we talked about Purusha, now we are going to talk of Virat. No such thing. That same, That same Purusha alone permeates Hiranyagarbha, permeates Prana. Everything is Purusha alone. Etanmaya cha. Here Maya means Swarthe, in its own form. Not a modification, not anything, in its own form alone. Not Prachurya, not predominance or preponderance, not not the other one, which is Vikara, modification. But here it is itself alone. It is permeated by itself, it is pervaded by itself alone. So this fact is etadartham aha, this fact is being talked about. Tam ja vishinashti, and it's going to be described in detail. And we have already chanted the mantra. And we have seen it, right? Without the thing, we have seen the meanings, right? Yeah. The heaven, Agnihi, Murdha, and then Chakshushi, the two eyes are sun and the moon. The Shrotre, the ears are nothing but the directions, cardinal and non-cardinal. The Veda is nothing but the mouth is nothing but the Vedas. It's spewing the Vedas, because if Bhagavan talks, what will Bhagavan say? Veda alone. And one of the five elements, the air is the prana, and the heart is the Vishwa. Vishwa here, I told you, is a pun, right? Yeah, so the Vishwa here is the individual, yourself, or Vishwa here, the whole Jagat. The whole Jagat is the prana of this Purusha, the heart of this Purusha. Padbhyam Prithivi, the feet are the foundation of this earth. And he, Esha, indeed this one is Sarva Bhutantaratma, that the truth of whom is the truth of all beings is this Purusha alone. So this Agni deserves a little bit of a, even just before we read this Bhashya, the Agni deserves a little bit of a mention here. Because usually what kind of Agni do we know?
Fire.
Yeah, just like the Vayu Agni, another five element. But here it is not used in the same way. It is used slightly differently, which this mantra and the next mantra are going to elucidate. Next mantra also Agni is going to be talked about, and this particular way of looking at Agni is going to be talked about. What is this particular way? This particular way is something that is derived from the Chandogya Upanishad, which is called Panchagni Vidya. Vidya here doesn't mean knowledge. Vidya means upasana. What is upasana? Meditation for the sake of gaining a certain chitta naischalyam, a certain kind of a non-waveringness of the mind, and chitta shuddhi, and the freeing the mind of raga and dvesha. That is why meditation is done. So in this meditation, this particular upasana, Panchagni Vidya, it is called. Vidya here, relative Vidya, knowledge of this meditation. So this Panchagni Vidya, it asks you to visualize certain things in a certain way. It asks you to look at the fire not as the fire element or that which powers the gas in your home or the microwave. It doesn't ask you to look at the fire as a source of light and heat, but look at the fire as a principle which inheres five things without which life cannot be sustained on earth. This is called Panchagni Vidya. And what are those five things? Like we need clouds, we need rain, correct? Yeah. Then what? We need clouds, we need, earth, correct? Clouds include rain. We need clouds, one, earth, two, and then we need the masculine principle, man, and then we need woman, feminine principle, because it's the interaction of the masculine and the feminine principle that brings about what is called the population, prajaha. So, and what is the fifth one? Swarga. Swarga means heaven. Why do we need the heaven? Because that's where the papa punya is shored up and used up. Why not hell? Because we are hoping we don't go there. So that in upasana we don't bring naraka. Because this is an upasana. Upasana means it's a meditation. In the meditation, why would you bring hell? What a hellish thought. Why should we bring hell? So Swarga, heavens, meaning it's a place where you utilize the punya that has been earned. And then when the punya finishes, what happens? you come back to the earth, to the Prithvi, that's the second one. How do you come back? Through the raindrops. That's why the clouds become an intervening thing. And what do you come back as? Either male or female. Correct? And even if you call yourself transgendered, it's basically because there is a gender dysphoria, means there is a certain gender not fitting in. So even the person called transgendered is not really a third category. It's men wanting to become women and thinking that they are women, and their anatomy has to be constructed accordingly, or vice versa, women who feel like they are actually trapped in a body that is a man's body. Interesting karma, that's all. But it's not a third category. So these two categories, which give rise to all other things in the universe, are very interesting. So first we have heaven, because that's where the person hopefully has gone, and then is spending his last punya check on a nice concert, dance drama by Rambha and Urvashi, heavenly nymphs. Then what? In the middle of the concert, a chute opens below. Trap door which is positioned directly under the dress circle seat. Correct? And the jiva is swallowed up in the chute. And this is just imagination, because somewhere, this is some other loka, correct? Heavens are who? Where are the heavens, You look up because you don't know where else to look, because everywhere else you look is misery. So then you see somebody crying, some earthquake, some Ebola virus, and everywhere you look. So you look up, because that's when you look down also, you're already looking down upon yourself. So then you look up, that's the only thing that is there. That's a natural human tendency, and the Veda goes along with it. So you look up, you say somewhere else this loka is. Even though it might be right next to you, you are not able to see it. So it's beyond your perception. So you look up, and then from that up, how do you come down? Because this is again, I told you last time, it's elephant jokes. This is how it is. These are just visualizations. So from that quote unquote up how? Because it's an elevated state. So that's also it's up. It's up above the world so high. Why? Because here it's all just a mix-up of happiness and misery. In fact, the happiness is inside the misery, and which is, you cannot even, it's so mixed up, you cannot even delineate it. That's why for the new year, we have a certain thing which we have, where it is made of neem leaves, which is one of the bitterest things on the earth, along with jaggery, which is like a solid form of molasses. The two are taken together to accept our life on this earth as as the sweetness is mixed with a lot of, strife, misery. So let me enjoy the sweetness, and let me also learn to enjoy the bitterness that comes. That is to put ourselves in orientation of acceptance to the new year ahead. Don't expect the new year to be all sweet. So that is the whole idea. So this mishra, this mix-up of this papa punya all the time coming is difficult, correct? So therefore, this world is a mix-up. The heaven is a place of pure punya enjoyment. From that pure punya enjoyment, which is of course far above and beyond this world, literally and figuratively. Literally because I don't know where it is, figuratively because it is situated high above this plane of just misery. So it is up in two different ways. So we take the figurative way, it is up above this horrid world of misery, correct? So from that up, how do you come down to this earth? You ride on the cloud in the form of a raindrop. This is sheer belief, very poetic. So the jiva rides, all the jivas cast forth from the heaven, or what happens to them? They ride in the form of potential raindrops. That's why it is Megha. One of the five Agnis is what? This is the cloud, is this fire which we are talking about. Fire means the potential to create. How this whole thing has come. So one is the fire is the heavens, because here it is the heavens are bright without a shadow of sorrow, and cast out from the heavens, spit out from the heaven, this jiva comes in the form of a raindrop potentially hidden in the cloud. And then these jivas rain on the food and enter the food. And the food are eaten by the potential man and the woman who are going to be the parents for this jiva. And the jivas are all in a hurry because yeah, they don't want to wait. They want to get into a body. Immediately they want to get into a yoni, a birth canal. Immediately. And in fact, interestingly, there is one Tibetan book of death and dying. Everybody should read it. It's so much fun. And in this Tibetan book of death and dying, of course, all these Tibetan beliefs are also not very far off from our belief. So there it says that the jivas come as moisture drops. Same thing, And what do? They just, in a subtle way, follow every marriage procession. Because so as soon as the announcement is made that this man is going to get married to another woman, so these jivas jostle around, and some are from the groom's side and some are from the bride's side, and this one says, you cannot be here, I am going to be incarnated first. And so the jiva, which is very pushy, gets incarnated first. So they go as little water drops, sweat drops, moisture drops, in the marriage procession. And then they are hovering around every young woman and young man because they are hoping that they'll get married, so that the young woman, they are potentially looking at, are you my mama? Are you my daddy? These disembodied jivas, this is how the Tibetan book of death and dying very hilariously presents. So not very far away from our understanding is also. So then the food is eaten by the parents to be, the potential parents. This is all about potential. And then this child is born, and then that child also grows up, and the same cycle follows. Correct? So whenever it rains, so in Eugene, there are too many jivas waiting to incarnate, you have to say, like Assam, Eugene, all these rainy weathers. Yeah. So this is something which is something very interesting. And so here the whole thing is to be seen as upasana. What is upasana? A meditation. And why? Because I'm not trying to entertain myself. That's not the meditation. Even though it is entertaining, it is seeing this Panchagni Vidya. So these are all Agni. Agni means they are all little pieces of this heaven alone. Everything is Purusha. And this Purusha is taken the form of heaven, taken the form of the cloud, taken the form of the jiva, taken the form of the man and the woman who are going to be the potential parents of this jiva. So this five-fold way, this whole universe is contemplated upon as non-separate from the Purusha. This is called Panchagni Vidya. That's why here Agni means heaven, because it is not this Agni, it is that Agni. Okay? Yeah. So now time for a little break. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Yeah, nice, everyone is here. Okay, we'll come back in about 10 minutes. So next 2 weeks we are going to have an attrition. These two are not going to be here. Yeah, these two.